And very few priests are as fast in doing this as I am. So sometimes this is a part of Easter Vigil that will need more than an hour. For more than an hour, the people in the old days had to stand or kneel. Now they're all seated. Watch the priest rattling through the 12 readings. Pius XII thought this was not good, and he abbreviated those 12. He shortened those 12 readings down to 4. And he missed the point again, because those 12 readings in the old days was the instruction for the catechumens, for the people to be baptized in Easter Vigil. While the priest was singing, while the priests and the readers, and the deacon, subdeacon, and the readers were singing those readings in a cathedral of a bishop, priests who had nothing to do at the same time would teach catechism to the people. So up on the altar you had the priest singing, rattling down his 12 readings, and at the same time, which was more than an hour, priests who worked for the cathedral or were called for this job would teach the faithful present in their pews about the Catholic faith. Needless to say that this was found a little bit disturbing in the ceremony, and a few centuries ago they abolished this custom because it was disturbing and because those sermons were not always acceptable. And Easter Vigil is the most holy night of all nights during the year, and you certainly shouldn't give some priests who don't know anything in theology the chance to teach what is wrong right during a sacred ceremony. However, the readings remain. And here is something that shows you that the people today have lost any sense of sacrifice, penance, and preparation. I always tell the people before I celebrate Easter Vigil, okay, the ones of you who think they have to suffer through 12 readings in Latin they don't understand, do not understand what Easter is about. Use the 1 hour that the priest needs at least to sing those 12 readings. Use that hour to say your rosary in preparation for Easter. Use the time you have to wait and suffer through this as the last penance before you finally celebrate Easter. Use the time to examine your conscience and see if you're ready for Easter. And if you really have to understand what the priest says, then in God's name use the missal. It will be difficult at my Mass because I don't allow the lights switched on before the glory of Mass. It's your last chance to pray in front of the Blessed Sacrament before Easter, and you got an hour to do so. Remember what Christ said on the mountain? When the apostles fell asleep 3 times? Can't you even stay awake this little time with me? Well, it seems that in Easter Vigil people are not supposed to. So Pope Pius XII abolished 8 of the 12 readings and left us with 4. It doesn't make sense. And then he introduced something both on Holy Thursday and on Easter Vigil, which is certainly an introduction to the new Mass. For the first time in very many centuries, something like 1500 centuries, 1400 centuries, the priest did not need to say the Judica Me. Now, he doesn't say that in Passion time, but for all the rest of the year he had to say the Judica Me, always. He does not say the Judica Me on Holy Thursday wearing a white chasuble. He does not say the Judica Me at the beginning of Mass on Easter Vigil wearing a white chasuble. On both occasions he does not say the last Gospel anymore. This was certainly new. This was not restoring, this was new. John the 23rd then went further. First of all, he inserted St. Joseph to the canon. What do we say about that? Again, I'm giving you the opinion of a theologian, not papal teaching. So you have no right to condemn me for what I say, and you have no right to quote me as if I was the Pope. Neither one nor the other. I have never left St. Joseph out of the canon, even though I don't say the Mass of 1962. And there's a reason. Historically speaking, St. Joseph does not belong in the canon. Because historically speaking, the only people who belong in the canon is the old martyrs on whose blood the church was built. The 12 apostles and Lini, Cleti, Clementi, Christi, Corneli, Cipriani, Lorenzi, Chrysogoni, Cosme, Damiani. Not St. Joseph. However, as it is a recent title of St. Joseph. I'm sorry, I forgot which pope introduced the title of Patron of the Church for St. Joseph. Certainly a right of the Pope to give him the title of Patron of the Church. Well, as St. Joseph recently has become the patron of the Church, we might as well have him in the canon. I can't see anything wrong with it, I'm sorry. But again, this is my personal opinion. John the 23rd did something else which is a lot more important than St. Joseph in the canon. He did indeed restore the importance of the liturgical seasons, and that was right. That was right. He gave the old importance back to Lent, and he gave the old importance back to the Sundays throughout the year. However, he went too far, I think, when he decided to have saints of rather outstanding importance, such as Saint Benedict, Saint Gregory the Great. Saint Benedict, the founder of the Occident, as we call him, the founder of Europe, the founder of the monastic system. Saint Gregory the Great, the one who codified Gregorian chant, which sounded horrible before he did codify it, believe me. Important saints like Saint Benedict and Saint Gregory the Great, after John the 23rd, are commemorated in Lent. Now that is going too far. That is definitely going too far. Even in the old days, St. Gregory and St. Benedict could not outrank a Sunday anyway. But that a ferial day, a weekday, would outrank the patron of Europe, St. Benedict, that is something that I cannot accept. John the 23rd changed around another little rubrics. Among them, he abolished the 3 prayers on low-ranking feast days. I think that was wrong, because in a time when we need more prayer than ever, he shouldn't have shortened the church prayer, but he should rather have added to it. We desperately need the prayer against those who persecute the church. Contra persecutores ecclesiae. A prayer that has practically disappeared in the 1962, right? Because you say it once a year. In the old days, you had to say it every day that was not duplex or higher. You had to say it on Sundays, even though St. Pius X promoted Sundays to be duplex prima classes. He left the title of semi-duplex with Sundays for the very sake of leaving the 3 prayers on Sunday. A Cunctis and the Contra Persecutores, or for the Holy Father. John the 23rd did not do a favor to himself when he abolished the frequent prayer for the Pope and replaced it with nothing. Because now, in the 1962 rite, you hardly ever say that prayer. I have to say it every time I celebrate a Mass lower than the rank of duplex. So, I've just given you a selection of changes. There's more to the changes of 1962, but the 1962 Mass, to a certain extent, could be interpreted as a transitory thing towards the new Mass. However, I do not see it that way. That's a malignant interpretation. Unless we have proof to the contrary, we always have to give the benefit of doubt to the Pope and to the Church. I must remind you of the fact that what is in Latin called the onus probandi, the duty to prove, always stays with us. It hardly ever stays with the Pope. The Pope does not have to justify his decisions before us. Only when we can prove him wrong, we may resist. This has always been understood in the Church. When St. Thomas Aquinas talks about obedience, and the second part of the Summa Theologiae, he says, if you can prove your prelate wrong, then you may and must resist him. If you can prove that what he orders is wrong, then you may and must resist him. Not before that. So if John the 23rd wanted it that way, he wanted it that way. A future pope will judge if it was good or not. The reason why the Society of St. Pius X decided to use the 1962 missals, but not unreservedly so, with modifications, is because of the law of self-defense, legitimate self-defense. I said not unreservedly, because Archbishop Lefebvre said he considered it absolutely wrong not to repeat the Confiteor, Misereatur, and Indulgentiam before the Communion of the Faithful. He said it was wrong to cancel that, because it would make communion a part of Mass. Now, you must not forget that the Communion of the Faithful, think about what I said about the Mass of the Pre-Sanctified on Good Friday. The Communion of the Faithful is not part of Mass. It is not. It never will be. The Communion of the Faithful is something that does not belong, strictly speaking, to the Mass. The popes decided to distribute communion to the faithful during Mass, but that doesn't make it a part of Mass. When a priest is ordained or a bishop consecrated, a priest or a bishop, they're both ordained or consecrated during Mass. That does not make the ordination rite a part of Mass. Absolutely not. And the fact that communion to the faithful is distributed during Mass does not make it a part of Mass. So, you have to follow the old rite of communion. The old rite of communion, before St. Pius X finally inserted it in Mass, you had communion distributed before or after Mass. So the priest would say an Our Father, the people would say a Confiteor, or the altar boy would say a Confiteor, the priest would turn around, Misereatur and Indulgentiam Absolutionem Missionem, you know the rite, and then he would distribute communion, and then he would give a blessing to the people who have received communion. This rite must be maintained in order to show, and never forget, Mass, like all sacraments, are essentially a sign. It's essentially a sign. Signium sanctificans homines, a sign that sanctifies man. And the sign, each sacrament, in the sign shows the particular grace received from the sacrament itself. Not the one who gives it, not the one who receives it, but the sacrament itself. Ex opere operato. Of the work that is worked here. And each sacrament has to signify the grace that it transmits. So the communion does not belong to the fulfillment of the sacrifice. The sacrifice of Mass is complete, absolutely complete, with the priest's communion. No matter if the priest is in mortal sin or not. That's his tough luck if he's in mortal sin. It doesn't change anything with Mass. If the priest does not communicate because he dies before communion, then you have the rare case of Blessed Sacrament present but no Mass said. Mass is not Mass before the priest has communicated. This is why at the end of Mass it says, Ite missa es. Go, this is the Mass. And it could not be said before. The Mass starts, yes, it starts with the name, in nomine Patris et Filii Spiritus Sancti, Amen. But it is not a Mass before the priest has communicated. Before the priest has completed the sacrifice of Christ. So this is essential part of Mass. Therefore, and for that reason, Pius XII called it a lie when you try to attribute the character of a meal to Mass. He said that's a lie. Paul VI said there is a character of meal to Mass. Well, Paul VI was a heretic. I can't help it. There is no character of a meal to Mass. When the priest communicates, this is not character of a meal. It is the consumption of the sacrifice, the completion of the sacrifice. Only now, the moment the priest communicates, the sacrifice of Mass is complete. Only now, not a second before. And therefore, the communion of the faithful has to be distinct from the communion of the priest. In the Confiteor, Misereatur, and Indulgentiam. Did he have the authority to do that? Yes. Because he like I realize, Holy Week has been changed to something unacceptable for me, not because I am I, but because I have grave theological reasons for what I say. Archbishop Lefebvre had grave theological reasons for what he did. And there was no pope around to ask. Paul VI rejected him anyway. He rejected him wholesale, not just in parts.